Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at a pretty heavy sword review, 4 different swords from the same store, and that's going to be Romance of Men. Now, the last sword we reviewed from Romance of Men was a katana, but they've recently stepped into the world of medieval swords, and so they did send us 4 different samples that we're going to take a look at. They did send this to us for free, and I want to be transparent about that, but we are going to do a fair and honest review on these swords because I don't want them to believe that they have a subpar product and continue to sell that subpar product. I would like them to improve on whatever we find we don't like about these swords. But just like a lot of the other Chinese manufacturers for medieval swords, these are pretty affordable European replicas, and they come decently sharp. They're meant for cutting, and they come with scabbards. And we're going to go over each one of them individually, and then we're going to show them collectively and do a little bit of cutting with it. So when you hear the name Romance of Men, you're probably thinking some yaoi website from 2010. It's not. They are a sword distributor online, and they usually deal in Japanese style swords, katanas, and other Asian type swords. But they recently stepped into the world of European swords, and they have the first 4 designs. They also just launched their brand new katana builder, which we are going to try building our own katana through them in our next video, so definitely stay tuned for that. But I was intrigued by their first 4 European designs, and by the time this video has launched, they've also added in 2 to 3 more, which I'm also very interested in. I believe it's a side sword and an executioner sword, and I think it would be really cool to get our hands on those. But first on the chopping block is their Type 18B longsword. So the classification of the sword, as I said, Type 18B, that comes from the Oakshott typology. I'm going to be using that typology to classify these 4 different swords, so that way you can understand the difference between them. So like other European swords coming from China, this comes with a scabbard already, and I always find that to be so cool because if you've ever purchased a European sword from Europe or from even US manufacturers, the scabbard usually costs quite a bit, and this is included in the price. So already just kind of off the bat, I really like the way it looks. We'll do a deep dive on the aesthetics when we bring it to the table. But at first glance, this is super nice. The scabbard is a deep navy blue. It's one of my favorite colors. Has some wire wrapping on the scabbard. And these harness points that hook to your belt, very, very good. Very good. Real leather, I can tell because of the backs. And it looks like it would suspend properly. And it even has the 3-point suspension system. So if you have this hanging right here, you would then have the tail of your actual belt feed into right here, and this is one of the best ways to carry a European sword. It locks it into the hip, and it is not going to move. It's a 3-point system. So this is very cool, very well thought out. You could wear this around and it wouldn't just kind of wobble on your belt. So very, very interesting. Let's go pull this thing out and let's see how it feels, because I want to get through these swords relatively quickly because there's 4 of them. So the Type 18B longsword is probably the most common longsword you can buy as a reproduction. Most sword producers that make European style swords have made a Type 18B, and I think that's just because aesthetically we're the most familiar with this shape for a longsword. But it feels really good. I like the faceted pommel, as I always do. The quillons are nice and flat up here, and it feels, let's see. It feels good. It's not the most lively blade that I've ever used in a Type 18 format, so there is a little bit of forward heaviness, but it's not terrible. It's not terrible. Let's look where that point of balance is on this sword. About, let's say, 4 inches. 4 inches, so that's probably why it feels a little bit forward heavy. Even if I would say 4 inches is pretty acceptable for a longsword. I mean, there are some that are like further out, like 6 inches, that have a much choppier feeling, but this feels pretty good. I would say it's a very standard feeling longsword. It has flex, the point of percussion. It's about right there. That's pretty normal as well. And the tip is well shapen. I like it so far. Again, feeling wise, not terrible, not terrible. I wouldn't say it is my favorite feeling longsword, but it's not bad. We'll get into edge geometry and a few of the closer up things later on, but we just reviewed another sword that has this half wire wrap, and I actually like them. I thought that they would be uncomfortable in the hands. I think it's all right. This Type 18B longsword is known as the Dragon Whisper sword. So each of these swords have their own unique name instead of just a classification. But it is a Type 18B style longsword with a deep fuller, And Quillons look very cool, like they're very unique looking. They're not just like straight lines or upswept. They're kind of a mixture of both. Sword feels all right in the hands. It is a little forward heavy for what the sword looks like it would feel like. So the point of balance is a little forward, but it feels like it's going to cut very well. It doesn't feel outrageously heavy. And we'll get the specs on all of these swords when we get them to the table. Let's move on to sword 2. If you're a fan of Kriegsmessers, falchions, or sabers, you're really going to love this one. This is the Windlash sword, which is kind of like a mix between these different types of blades. If I were to classify what this sword is, it is probably close to a two-handed falchion. It has a longsword style hilt, very cool S-swept quillons, and a curved blade with a not sharpened false edge, but it definitely has a beveled false edge. And of course, the blade is sharpened all the way through the bottom. Really unique blade. I would say that this is almost fantasy looking. This doesn't look like anything I've ever seen in like a museum or anything like that. But I would say it's historically inspired, feels very cool, feels very good. It is very forward heavy. This is a brutal chopping weapon. And as you can see, the point of balance is like 6 inches out. So that's pretty far, but you know what, for a weapon like this is going to be a heavy chopper. It probably needs to be that forward heavy to get that kind of power. And I can feel it. As soon as you cut through, that blade wants to keep going. So you're probably gonna end up doing very long sweeping cuts with a blade like this. The blade stock feels a little thicker than the others because the spine is very thick on the back. It's not beveled out into a secondary edge. Grip-wise and aesthetics, it's very similar to the 18B that we were just holding, except it has the fishtail pommel right here, but it is wire-wrapped. It has a very similar scabbard to the very first one. I would say it's almost identical, but it is curved and it has a different shape right over here. But it fits in and has no wiggle or drop when you hold it upside down. So really cool. Falchions, messers, and other curved blades are not classified under the oakshot typology. They are listed under something called the Elmsley typology. The classification that I would most likely put this under is a 3E+. So 3E is the type of blade it is, and plus means that there's just a tiny bit of curve, and I think that this falls right in line with a 3E+. It has the cutout that you typically see on 3E type blades. Sometimes there's even more, looks like almost like a bat wing of some kind, but the gentle curve falls right in line with the plus category. Let's try the third sword. Our third sword is the Vanguard, and this one is truly unique. I've never owned a European sword that quite looks like this. This almost looks like a crusader era sword with the rounded tip, like when they were transitioning from Viking style swords. But this is very cool because the blade is broader, it has the 3 fullers, and it's a 1.5 hand sword, so it's not really a long sword. And it has this really cool wheel pommel with the cross in there, so it truly does look like a sword that was used in the Crusades. Classification-wise, this would be considered a 15A on the oakshot typology because of the broader blade, rounded tip, and just the size of the handle. Feeling-wise, though, it actually feels really good. You can do it one-handed. It's a little tough one-handed, but with 2, it feels amazing. And you can hear that sword wind because of these deep fullers. It is a really nice blade. Even with the broader blade, though, it has good flex. It's not too flexible, feels stiff enough that you could throw a thrust. The grip is a little plainer, but the leather feels and looks really good. The fitment to the crossguard is a little strange, but we'll get to that once we get to the table. But I do like the way this feels. And just like the others, it comes with a scabbard. This scabbard is, of course, shorter, but it does look a little less fancy than the longer weapons. I'm noticing that it is black instead of navy blue. The part where the sword meets the mouth of the scabbard looks a little less finished, but the fitments still look decent. This looks very utilitarian. The shape is a little rounder. Not bad, especially given the price. I do think that it's kind of odd that they use brown leather here and black leather on the scabbard. That just shows that the scabbard is probably a mass-produced item for a lot of different swords, but I'm not complaining for the price point. It's still pretty good. Let's move on to our last one. Last but not least, we have the Aquila. This is an arming sword, a Type 16 tapered arming sword, and I've owned a few swords that feel and look like this one, but this has a very unique shape to it. It has a super tapered tip, and I'm talking like almost needle point near the end. It feels very good in the hand, and the grip is a little longer than what I'm used to for an arming sword. Being a Type 16, it has a slightly longer grip with that wheel pommel. Very classic medieval type of arming sword, and the scabbard itself is even more utilitarian than the others. We noticed this with the suspension system. The suspension system looks a little more generic, but that's mostly because this is a smaller sword. It doesn't need as much support on the suspension, but the scabbard could have been made a little bit more ornate to match the others. I do like this shape though. Typically you would see like some sort of an acorn at the end of this on, I would say, more expensive blades, but the feeling of the Aquila is very good. It feels similar to the nicer arming swords that I've owned in the past. Now, something very interesting. This sword is much stiffer than the others. Even though it has a much thinner tip, it doesn't flex nearly as much, so your thrusting capability with this is going to be pretty great. You'll probably be able to go through a gambeson very, very easily with a sword this stiff. So very interesting that the thinner tip sword is stiffer than the broader ones. Let's get a closer look on the table. Let's go. Starting with the Aquila, the leather is very, very nice, and the wasted grip feels very good in the hands. I like the way it looks, and it has this like phoenix looking emblem, which I'm not really big on emblems within the pommels themselves, but some people will be into that, and it does look very cool. There is a very polished peen. I mean, it's not polished into the pommel or anything, but it doesn't stick out too much. It actually looks pretty good. And we go down to the crossguard. It has a very standard upswept crossguard right there. And then you have that Type 16 wide blade going down into a very thin point. Very cool. Let's take a look at the fitment of the crossguard. It actually doesn't look bad. It looks like it was meant for this sword. It doesn't look like it was mass produced. It looks like a tight fitment. There's not a whole lot of space, so very cool. Next up we have the Vanguard, and that cross coin, that emblem in the middle, looks very cool. The peen on this one is a little less cleanly done. It pops out a little bit more than the arming sword, but just like the arming sword, the grip is well made. I'm not usually a fan of these collars right here, but like as you notice on the arming sword, it's not present. I just feel like it looks a lot cheaper, but it doesn't look bad. Love the triple fuller on this blade and how it goes all the way down. But something I'm not a fan of, let's take a look at that fitment. The blade overlaps the hole. Let's see if I can get it clear. The blade overlaps the hole, and it looks like this crossguard was not made for this blade, and I think that that looks quite ugly. So that's something that I would probably fix in the future to make what would be a very unique looking European sword even better, even more high quality. The Dragon Whisper is really good looking for a longsword. I like less ornate looking longswords, but this one for the price is just really good. The quillon shape is unique enough that it stands out, but it's not just out there and crazy. And the blade, of course, very standard 18B, has that nice fuller. For a standard cutting longsword, especially for HEMA schools wanting to get into cutting, I think that this is a very good option, and I'm always a fan of that navy blue color. Let's take a look at the fitment between the guard and the blade. I would say nothing too special here. It's not showing any poor fitment, but there is a little bit of a gap. Nothing I would say that needed to be changed though. For the price point, this is still very acceptable, but it doesn't look like it's been mismatched, which I usually hate. Last but not least, you have the Windlash. It has the fishtail pommel near the end. I am not always a fan of fishtail pommels practically, but I like them aesthetically. And the reason why practically I find them to be a little cumbersome is this little point right here. It digs into your hand on stronger cuts, and it gets very annoying very quickly. So if that was rounded off a little more, I think this would be a more popular option. The half wire wrap is always a very nice choice, and both of these swords have it. You have the navy blue leather underneath, which I think is a great touch. The S-shaped quillons is what's going to make this sword stand out from the others. It looks really cool. Personally, not my aesthetic, but I know that a lot of people would love to carry this on their belt because it just looks very unique. The flat ground blade is curved, doesn't really taper a whole lot. I have a feeling there's not a lot of distal taper on that, but it is a chopping blade, a brutal chopping blade. And it is single edge. That back edge is just beveled. It is not sharpened from the factory, but you probably could put a very good edge on it. And I am a very big fan of having both sides of the blade sharpened. And one more unique feature of this blade is this inward curve right at the ricasso. Very cool. Let's see how much these things weigh. First up, we have the arming sword. .86 pounds. Next up we have the Vanguard Crusader style blade. Hand and a half sword at 3.24 pounds, not bad. Okay. Next up is the Dragon Whisper, the longsword. All right, right at 3.4 pounds, that is well within historical weights for a Type 18B longsword. And last up we have the two falchion beast, the Windlash. Weighing in at 3.5 pounds, which is also not as heavy as I thought it'd be. All right, so let's try this two-handed falchion. First up, not as razor sharp as the other swords I've messed with, so I don't know how well this is going to perform, but we're going to try it out anyway. Point of percussion is right there, right where the blade becomes fat. Oh my God. Okay, I thought it just doesn't feel as sharp as the other blade, so I thought that this was not going to cut as well. I could have used way less force than that. That's, that's crazy. Not that one though. Let's try another one. These blue bottles for some reason don't like to cut, so I'm interested to see how this two-handed falchion is going to do. Here we go. All right, next up is the two-handed longsword with the faceted pommel, so let's give it a try. Point of percussion is right there, so it's a little further up on the blade.
It even had the ting, the ting.
That was cool. All right, this is a much thicker bottle. Okay, this is a good cutter, and it sings when it cuts. Let's see, perfectly straight.
Now it is.
This one is actually pretty sharp. This one's sharper than the two-handed falchion. These are excellent bottle cutters. And that's, again, the hard plastic. These are much harder to cut than the regular water bottles. These usually fly. So edge geometry on this is fantastic, and it's pretty when it cuts. It sounds great. All right, next we have the hand and a half Crusader sword. This has the wider blade on it. I've never cut with a blade like this before. Pretty sharp out of the box on this one. And point of percussion right there. So I'm gonna try one cut two-handed and one cut one-handed, and we'll see if I'm able to get it. This actually feels pretty good in the hand. Yeah, these bottles are a little more brittle, so I'm not surprised that this one tore a little bit, but actually it didn't really tear, I just scooped it. So we're gonna try a different bottle. Sings too. Yeah, I'd say this is a good cutter too. All right, last but not least, we have the arming sword. Surprisingly, this one feels good, even though it has that extended pommel. I thought it was gonna feel a little back heavy, but it feels good in the hands, and it is very, very acute point. I'm gonna do a thrusting test on this near the end, so here we go. Like nothing. Let's try two bottles with this one. Point of percussion is right there. All right, let's try one more cut with this, and then I'm gonna thrust it. These bottles are more brittle, a little harder to cut through, so we'll see if it can make it through. Now, as soon as the top came up, there's nothing left. All right, last test. This has a super fine point on it. Doesn't look to be well, does it have a reinforced tip? It doesn't have a reinforced tip, so it is a very fine point, but it seems very easy to control the tip. I didn't even try. It's like very rapier-like going through.
Oh, there you go.
Oops. That is, I'm gonna do it again. This is way too fun. Just for fun, we're gonna do one more cut, and then we're gonna move on to bamboo. Insane. One of my students was feeling this and found that the edge, I think it's because it's very finely put on, it's slightly duller where we made impact on the bamboo, but not by much. It's still very usable for cutting, but you can tell it is not as sharp as the rest of the blade. So that means that the edge on this is very fine, it's very acute, but nothing deformed or rolled. All right, the Crusader sword, big fat blade. Not sure how it's gonna work against bamboo, but I have high hopes for it. Oh, that might have been me. I think I was a little sloppy with it. Let's try cutting this way real quick. Or, that wasn't me, huh? Oh, I think it was me. Yeah, so the fact that it's cutting after I've split it down here and it's still cutting without breaking, that means that this is probably a good cutter and I just botched that first cut. So we're gonna try that again and see if it was just me or the bamboo. So far, that is the best cutter out of all of them. That was easy, and the bamboo is smooth. The whole thing is smooth. That couldn't have cut any better. Last but not least, we got the arming sword. I definitely am gonna have to hit right at the point of percussion because of this thinner tip. So right about here is gonna be the sweet spot. So let's give it a try. I felt that one. Felt that one give. Let's try it this way. Now, that one did not go through. It's pretty wet bamboo as well, so we're gonna try that again and see if it was just me. Gonna have to get a little closer, I think, for this to work because this tip is just too thin to get hard targets like that. Yeah, so point of percussion, you're really gonna have to be on point with this. Right here is where you're gonna hit it because this is too much flex up top. Yes, yeah, once you have that point of percussion down, this cuts very well. But again, the tip is going to be very optimized for thrusting, and the middle part of the blade is where you want to impact on hard targets. So, really good cutter as well. I hope you guys enjoyed our review of the Romance of Men, first 4 European swords on their lineup. Really impressed with what is coming out for the price it's coming out with. Prior to this era of time within sword buying history, European swords that actually cut well and were traditionally made were very expensive, and it's just getting more accessible to everyone. We see the same trend happening with katanas. It was only 10 years ago where a good quality hand-forged katana would cost you quite a bit of money, but you can get one for as low as $100 now, and they'll cut the Tommy mats just fine. So whether you're a collector or you're a cutter, I believe that the Romance of Men European sword lineup is going to serve you very well, and they seem to be coming out with more and more. So go to the website, check it out, and definitely buy with confidence. Once again, if you want to support the channel, the best way to do that right now is to like and subscribe to this channel. We would like to reach 5,000 subscribers by the time 2026 ends. It's a lofty goal, but I would really like to reach it as soon as we possibly could, because in 2026 we're going to be launching so many new projects. Aside from just more videos, we're going to have an online academy where you can learn how to use a longsword, how to use a Lengmesser, and even how to use a katana. It's a huge goal of mine to have all of our curriculums online by the end of 2026, maybe at the beginning of 2027, and we would love the support. And if you want to train in HEMA or Japanese sword fighting, check out our website at www.historicalfightingarts.com. We have schools in Norfolk and in Fredericksburg, and if you're in that area, the first class is free. We would love for you to come visit and hang out with us. That's all I got for you guys. Bye.